Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus, and it's Wednesday, and we don't talk about Bruno. With me, as always, is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and welcome to all listeners to Wednesday, where I can't tell, should I be happy that it's closer to Friday or sad because it's closer to Monday?
Definitely happier.
But still, we don't talk about Bruno.
Voyse and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and dramatic. Because of a love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
And hopefully give you some food for that.
Well, let's jump right into the stories while enjoying my morning café brew.
What are you going to enjoy this morning?
Lemon and ginger with honey tea.
Oh, that's really good. Excellent for inflammation, for arthritis, and even headaches.
That's good.
But I don't know if these stories are going to help take away those headaches. It just might do the opposite and counteract that tea.
No.
For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below.
Happy Wednesday.
For our first story, am I the a-hole for forcing my father to pay child support? My father is a dick. When he got my mother pregnant, he wanted her to quit her job and just stay home to be a good little wife and mother. He is very well off due to a trust fund, and he doesn't really need to work. My mother refused and divorced him. Because of a prenup, she got very little and he moved back to Europe. His parents never knew about me, and my mother had a good profession, and I never really wanted for anything. My grandmother and grandfather, her mom and dad, were awesome, and I got to spend my summers exploring the wilds of Western Canada with them. My father never paid the child support he should have. Like I said, it didn't really matter. My mom makes good money, and she gave me a great life as a child. So the point of this post, I'm female 28 getting married. I met the love of my life, male 31, at university, and we have been together for 8 years. He is a wonderful person, and he really is my lobster. Sorry, Friends reference. His family is from the same city as my father, and they are a huge, rambunctious bunch. Because of a bunch of intermingled business and personal relationships, my parental grandparents found out about my impending wedding, and me, I suppose. They have been in contact and want to come to Canada to meet me and my fiancé, who I guess is a grandson of an acquaintance of theirs. Small world. When they found out that my father had basically abandoned me to fend for myself in this world, this is honestly how they see it. They were pissed to say the least. It is very funny, because we are decidedly upper middle class here. So long story short, they had their lawyer calculate the amount of child support my father should have paid with interest, and the cost of my post-secondary education. They then gave me this as a gift. What I didn't know was that it came out of my father's yearly draw on his trust fund. He is furious because it is obviously a sizable amount, and it will very much affect his finances for at least the next 2 years. He may need to get a job. He has been contacting me and telling me that his current wife and children will be negatively affected if I don't give him back this money. I don't really need it, and I guess I am entitled to it, and I am getting a trust fund now as well. But I really want to pay off any debt my mother may have and make sure that when she retires, she can do whatever suits her fancy. I am not giving it back. Am I the a-hole?
No way you're the a-hole. In fact, good on you for keeping the money and trying to, it sounds like, help your mother. I feel like at this point for you, especially because you said your mother has been well off. She had a good profession. It sounds like you still, despite your father being absent and being the dick that you say he is, you had a decent upbringing. You had good grandparents that gave you good values. You sound like you have a good head on your shoulders. So everything kind of worked out. It sucks that your dad dipped and did what he did, but it sounds like it was probably worked out for the best. I don't feel bad for him and his so-called family, because what can you actually trust when someone has obviously his values? He thought it was acceptable to leave a country behind with a child and not support them in any way. So if those are your kind of values already, I think you're a suspect human. So I wouldn't believe anything that came out of their mouth to begin with. So hey, sorry that it sucks that it's going to be a little hard for you for 2 years, you trust fund child. But OP's right. Go get a job if you need to float yourself for 2 years. That sucks. I would have loved to have heard the amount, because we're talking over 18 years of child support.
With interest. And her post-secondary school.
And schooling. So I am certain that this was a huge, wake up and then go, Mommy, Daddy, I'm ready for my money this year. And then they drop it. Go, the bag feels a little light. What's wrong? What's wrong with my bag, mama? Like...
Yeah, it's probably one of those things.
Get out of here with that. Yeah, you're not the a-hole. Keep the money. Let it build the next part of your life. Be smart with it, obviously. It sounds like you just kind of backwards walked into the family that you weren't invited into, because they're also, you say it, you now have a trust fund.
Yeah.
Like, life just got extremely interesting for you through no helping from your father either. So what kind of backwards Hollywood Canada story is this? But hey, I love it. Good for you.
Well, all of Reddit says that she's not the a-hole. In fact, let me go ahead and give you a couple little updates. Edit, to answer some common questions. 1. My half-siblings will not really be affected. They have trust funds set up already, and their tuitions and fees and stuff are covered. 2. My grandparents' family sets these up when a kid is born. One of the reasons my father is upset is because since he didn't bother to tell his parents about me, they did not set this up. They have since taken a good chunk of his trust fund and used it to set mine up. Realistically, the principal, being separated 28 years ago, would have left him in the exact same position. 3. My mom was working on getting her PhD so she could help kids with a certain condition. That is what he wanted her to walk away from.
Wow.
4. My grandparents have sent me pictures of my family there. The coolest thing is that my grandfather looks like the granddad from The Parent Trap. 5. My mom never remarried, but she has had a special friend since I was 5. He is amazing and taught me to swear in Colombian Spanish. Edit número 2. I just had lunch with my mom. Apparently, she has no debt. Like, at all. I guess she did literally write the book about the treatment for kids she works with. She does okay for herself. I never really thought about it. We decided that what would be best is to set up a scholarship for people who want to go into her field of study. Since I am now a trustafarian, I can afford to do this. I am, however, going to borrow her and her friend a trip for after my wedding, and I am going to go pay off my car. Edit 3. My half-brother has posted about this. He has a slightly different viewpoint than myself. He is not in any way coming after myself or my mother. If you comment there, keep in mind he is a young man who is disillusioned with his father.
Well, that sounds interesting.
Does it? Interesting enough for me to find?
Oh, I'm guessing you did.
I did.
All right, let's spill the tea.
For her half-brother's post, he put in, "Am I the a-hole for being furious with my father for not paying child support? I am using a throwaway because I fully expect to be downvoted. I feel like an a-hole posting this, but I feel I must." A young woman posted in the sub about how her grandparents gave her the child support she has been due after her father did not. I am beyond enraged at my father for putting us in this situation, but I want to clarify some points. I spoke with my father today, and he has shared this with me. Take it as you will. He did not feel that his wife should work. The lady in question is not a medical doctor or anything, just a clinical psychologist, and she works with disadvantaged children. It is noble, but she could have done more with fundraising and awareness. Yes, he did not pay child support. He was never asked to do so. My half-sister's other grandparents are very well set up, and her mother is quite successful in her career. She did not want contact with my father. Yes, myself and my sisters have our educational costs paid for from a trust fund, but we will be missing out on several activities and gifts we were expecting from our father. We will not have full access and spending privileges until we are 25. My father has a job. He just does not accept a salary from the NGO he works with. I will not bore you with the details, but needless to say, this has been gossip in my social circle for a month now. Yes, I feel my father was an ass not to stay in the life of his firstborn daughter. I read many of the comments on the original post, and one caught my attention. If we are invited, my siblings and I will be delighted to attend the wedding of our older sister with my grandparents. My father thinks I should be on his side and is upset that I am not. I have not spoken to him in the time when this came to light and today. I told him that he is responsible for the actions that led to this and that he is a disappointment. I am being the a-hole, but I'm trying not to be.
All right, well, you definitely are the a-hole too, along with your dad, regardless. You just basically whined to us about how you're not going to be given gifts and receive trips and things like that from your allowance, you trust fund child.
Well, first things first, let me go ahead and give you some insight that some commenters made on this. They said, when you're talking about people who are in a totally different tax bracket than what you and I are used to, their way of talking, for them, it's different.
Sure.
For us, it might seem condescending and spoiled. For them, it's weirdly quite natural.
I bet.
Now, the one thing that a lot of commenters did take away when it came to how he posted is how he tried to downplay his half-sister's mother's work. Something that was more. And in my mind, I'm saying,
I want to ask, what is he doing with his life?
I have no idea.
Outside of depending, what it sounds like, counting the money that he's not receiving anymore from his trust.
In my mind, I keep thinking, it doesn't matter if you're a medical doctor or a clinical psychologist. Anything that works to better humanity as a whole, I think is something to be commended.
Sure. Honestly, even if she was just a clerk at a local store, if she didn't want to stop working, that was her prerogative. And she shouldn't have been shamed out of it. Regardless of what they think, it's not up to them. That's what I find ridiculous about this. Then you started penning it, going, well, you could have done other... No, stop. That's not what this was about. Like I said, he sounds just as out of touch as his father.
Well, unfortunately, some families are a little dysfunctional like that.
I guess you are right, though. When you're dealing with a different tax bracket, life does look and sound much different than what you're used to.
Well, let's go ahead and go to our next story, shall we?
Mm.
For our next story, am I the a-hole for telling my niece not everyone is religious? Went to dinner at a family member's house. My niece was there and said we need to pray before we eat. I told her not everyone prays, so she said her mom told her if you don't pray, you're going to hell. I said I don't believe in any of that and that other people have different beliefs. It's okay to believe in something, but not okay to try and force it on other people. Now her mom is mad at me that I told her that. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Just got finished with work and this really blew up. We were at one of my cousin's houses, not at her mom's house. She is 6 years old, but according to previous talks with her mother, she has a great fear and love for Jesus. Still makes me cringe. I did not force my views on her. I simply told her that there are other beliefs out there. I agree that if someone doesn't believe in what we do equals eternity in hell is a terrible thing to teach a kid. Thanks everyone for opinions, but there is no way I can get to all of the comments.
I can imagine the firestorm that got kicked up from this spicy meatball of a story. Because you're dealing with a lot. So I guess we'll start unpacking the story. OP is in her 20s-ish?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Well,
although I don't think she specifies her age.
I guess it really doesn't matter. She's an adult.
Correct.
She has a niece, 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They're at a cousin's house at a dinner. They're about to eat, so they're praying.
It sounds like the niece and her mother wants to pray.
Okay. Well, then that is completely up to you. If that's your customs and your religion and that's what you practice, then you're allowed to do that. I guess I'll say it like this. I don't believe the OP is the a-hole when it comes to this type of situation. She was teaching her niece that I think that is something very important to teach a child, especially if they are religious, is that not everyone believes in what you believe. And I think that's important to understand. Obviously, you can believe what you want. Everyone is allowed to believe what they want. But where I stop is when someone is trying to make you adhere or believe what they are practicing. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's when I start losing respect for people. Everyone's allowed to have their opinion about what happens when we leave. But irregardless, yeah, I don't believe that the OP is the a-hole. I guess we're going to just have to take her word for how she did explain it to the child. Is if she did do it calm and collected and exactly the way she says it, then I don't believe she's the a-hole.
Well, a lot of Redditors also say that she's not the a-hole. They say as long as she wasn't being overwhelming or rude about it and she was just explaining, it's not an issue. In fact, it's very enlightening. She's 6 years old. She needs to understand the different views in the world. It doesn't mean that her own beliefs have to change, but she needs to respect other people's beliefs. Well, let's go ahead and deviate away from this family dinner. Let's see what's going on with this family agreement. For our next story, am I the a-hole for dropping a child off because I was lied to about my pay? I, 21 female, work as a babysitter/nanny while I finish my credits for my early child education. I'm very well known in my area and am professional and have different ads for myself. I get multiple jobs a week. I don't normally babysit for family, but I agreed to a few days ago. The child was 4, and with that age, I usually charge $15 an hour, or $200 a day. For this particular family member, I agreed to do it for $150 a day. It was 2 hours in, and my relative told me she could only pay me $50 to $80 and that she hoped I understood. I told her I didn't understand because I told her up front already, and that I even lowered my rate for her. This is what I live off of. I missed out on another opportunity that would have paid way more, so I can't have her lowball me. She began ignoring me. So I told her if she continued, I would drop her off at another relative's. She continued to ignore me, so I dropped her off at this relative's sister's house, who agreed to watch her. Within a few minutes, I got a text saying how unprofessional I was, and how dare I do that she's family and I was being extremely selfish. This is how I make money for a living. I gave her multiple warnings, and we agreed on a price beforehand. Am I the a-hole?
Nope, and you sealed it right there. You agreed on a price beforehand. I don't care if they're your family or if it's some long distant relative or if there's a friend. You agreed on the price. That's the end of it. Now, you drop the kid off. You say you dropped it off to that relative's sister's house. So, okay, cool. At least you didn't just, I was scared like we're talking like they dropped her off at some local park and hope she fended for herself kind of situation.
Oh God, that would be awful.
Like, thank goodness that didn't happen, because I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's figure out where she drops this kid off, because then I can side with her. She dropped her off at a safe location. It was her sister's home. I can't even be upset with that. She did her due diligence, made sure the kid was at least in a safe place. Told her about the situation, I'm certain. But yeah, that's funny. So they agree on $150, which is already low for her services. She says she lives off of this. This is her income. And then 2 hours into the watching, the OP's family member texts her and says, oh, by the way, it's either 50 or 80 that I can pay you. I hope you understand. So we're going to be realistic about this. She was probably leaning more towards 50 than she was 80. Even if you are going to accept that, it's far lower than 150 on both of those. That's terrible to have treated a family member. I love how the family member's like, how dare you treat a close family member like this? And
you're being unprofessional.
But you're doing it to her. What? You're definitely not the a-hole. At least you now know who not to do business with.
Well, Redditors also say that she's not the a-hole. They said, had she dropped that child off somewhere that wasn't safe, that'd be a different story. Yep. But in this case, she made sure that she was dropped off with a relative that was close with the child and with her. Everything's kosher.
Yep.
If you can't live up to the agreement that you agreed to, and literally just a couple hours in, she tells you that she's not going to pay you. I would have expected, had somebody done something like this, they would have showed up at the end with the money saying that they're not going to pay.
Sorry, here's $50 for you. What are you going to do to me?
Right. It's very odd that she did it in the middle of...
Well, she was expecting the hometown discount. Well, we're family. Obviously, you're going to do this for me. It wasn't just the 150 that she stole. It was the potential of more money from another client, you know what I mean, that she passed on.
Oh, yes. Well, that was a very interesting situation. Let's see what happens when it comes to a father and his daughter's car.
Get me in on this ride.
Well, it's not an Uber, but let's go for our next story. Am I the a-hole for selling my daughter's car? I, 56 male, have a son, 28 male, and a daughter, 22 female. I like both of my kids equally. However, they are different individuals with different lives, so I help them based on their needs. My son did not do well in high school and went to a community college and decided it was not for him after a semester and went to trade schools and eventually settled on HVAC. He had issues sticking to things, so as a reward, when he became certified in HVAC, I bought him a brand new truck as a gift. My daughter got into a good college out of state and was always more academically minded. When she was about to finish high school, it came to a surprise to me that she had taken it for granted that I would also get her a new car, even though I never said that. I explained that there would be no need for a college girl in a big city to have a car. She then asked if I could help with tuition. I did not pay for trade school either, so I declined. Eventually, she seemed down, so I offered to buy a used car in my name, and she could use it for a while until I decided to sell it, but she would have to maintain it. She seemed really happy with that, so we got an old 99 BMW for really cheap. The body was in good condition, but the engine and transmission needed work, and it needed painting. She did the essential fixes first, but then slowly did unnecessary ones, even though I never asked for that, and repainted most of the car and had the interior detailed. When she came back for a visit this week after finishing her finals, I decided it was time to sell the car and listed it. She seems upset with me, even though we had agreed to it, and I never asked her to repaint the car. She said she thought I was going to sell it much later when it rusted or something. She also says I can sell it more expensive because of her fixes, but the reality is I got the car just before the pandemic, and used cars cost a lot more since, and that is why I can sell it for more. I offered to pay her back for the half of the paint work. Am I the a-hole here?
Okay. This is certainly an adventure of how to be a bad parent. You are definitely the a-hole. I don't care how you try to somersault and gymnastics your way into believing that you're not, but you tried, but you are. You are definitely the a-hole. I'm actually shocked at how you can believe that you're not playing favorites here by telling me that your son, and great, hey, he got into the trades. You got him a brand new truck. That's great. He could have paid for it himself, especially because he's making a decent living off of his trade. Your daughter, you got to think about it. She just saw her brother get a new car from her dad. Why wouldn't she have expected one, right? Like, you can see where a kid would go ahead and assume that that's what's going to happen for them. I can understand that part of it. So she eats it. She gets a used car. She meets her father at least halfway in the middle on that one. He said she seemed happy about it. Then she takes the car over, and then not only does she repair it for the things that need to happen for it, then she starts making modifications to make it a better car. She's making it her own car.
Interior details.
You're quite the jackass for having her come after a final and then telling her on her way back, by the way, I'm selling the car that you've been working on and using for however long this has been going on, right? The least you could have done at that point is just giving it to her. You've already bought it. Or if you really wanted to, because you sound very cold towards her, you could have at least offered her a chance to buy the car. Pay you what you put into it, because it doesn't sound like you cared a whole lot about it anyway. We're talking about a 1999 BMW.
Correct.
How much is that actually worth that you needed to go out of your way to go, hey, I also need to profit off it some more now, when she's using it and she's putting her time into it? What? You goon? Yeah, no, you're definitely the a-hole.
Well, all of Reddit also says he is the a-hole. Let me go ahead and give you 2 of his edits so that you can see some updates on what he said. Okay. Seems people think it was wrong, but my son only got the truck after schooling, and my daughter has not finished school yet. I have not thought of her graduation gift yet, but the car is only listed, and I will think about it and reconsider.
Oh, well, at least there's that.
Edit 2. Okay, I will let her keep it and delist it for now. My plan was always to sell it, as I feel like the 90s BMWs in good shape are desirable, but she seems attached to the car now.
I mean, yes. I mean, I guess I don't know enough about old cars, so who knows? Maybe I'm wrong about the valuation of the car. It might be worth a lot of money, but at the end of the day, does it matter? That's something that you gave her for her to use. And yeah, a weird thing to have, like, in the middle of her schooling, cut her out. And
but I think it's really weird because he gave his son a brand new truck, not used, brand new.
Yeah, like I said, I just feel like he has a different viewpoint of his son than he does his daughter. He doesn't even really see it, I guess.
Well, let me go ahead and read you one of the comments that I thought kind of went with what you just said right now. You're the a-hole, and you clearly have a favorite. You bought your son a brand new truck, but decided that your daughter didn't need a car. But when your daughter asked for you to help her with her tuition, you said no, because you didn't pay for your son's tuition, conveniently forgetting that you did buy him a brand new truck. Not buying a truck for your daughter didn't stop you from buying one for your son. So why did not paying your son's tuition stop you from contributing to your daughter's?
That's sad. But hey, at least the good thing that came out of this was Reddit at least kept her daughter from losing the car that she's put that time into.
Oh, yes. Well, that was a weird relationship between a father and a daughter. Let's see what this next relationship between an ex, her son, and his father is like. For our next story, am I the a-hole for asking my ex if our son, 11, could bring his stepbrother, also 11, on their father-son camping trip? My ex and I got a divorce when our son was 6. When he was 8, I started dating my current husband. On the day my son met his stepbrother, they stood in front of each other, sized each other up the way little boys do, and were silent for a moment. Then my son asked, "Do you want to play Smash Bros?" And his stepbrother said yes, and then ran upstairs. It was fraternal love at first sight. They've been attached at the hip ever since. My stepson's mother passed a few years ago, and my husband was actually reticent to introduce me and my son to his 2 kids because he thought it was too soon. It turns out that where some kids get a pet after a parent dies, my stepson and stepdaughter got a brother. The first year we were all together, my stepson asked if my son could come along when they visited their mother at the cemetery on her birthday, and he spent the whole car ride over telling my son all about her, and it seemed therapeutic for him. Later that night, I checked in and saw that my son had climbed up to the top bunk and they had fallen asleep curled up together. Before she entered her current 7 going on 17 phase, my stepdaughter used to crawl into my son's lap as often as she did my stepson and ask them to read to her. Since the divorce, my ex-husband has been unreliable at best. He cancels on my son regularly, making some excuse about work or what have you. The twice monthly weekend together have trailed off to 1 or 4 times a year. Every time I have to tell my son his father canceled, my stepson goes to his father and asks if the 3 of them can do something together. One of the few things my ex-husband likes enough to always follow through with is camping. He's planning on taking my son to the Poconos in a few weeks, the weekend after Father's Day weekend. My son loves camping as well, and he's the one who convinced my stepson to join Boy Scouts next fall. The thing is, this year, he wants to bring his stepbrother along. I told my ex-husband this, and he got upset, saying that it's their time together and he doesn't want someone else's kid along with them. He says that it's something to be the 2 of them bonding. I told him he's had plenty of chances to bond that he blew off for one reason or another, and that he should consider himself lucky that he has such a compassionate and sensitive son, and that our son still wants anything to do with him. He hung up on a huff. His mother called yesterday to complain that I was expecting my ex to just sit there while my son and stepson went off on their own and ignored my ex completely, and said that I need to work at it from his perspective since he only gets to see his son a few times a year. For obvious reasons, this annoyed me to the point where I hung up. My husband says that he gets it and thinks I should let it just be the 2 of them. Am I the a-hole?
Okay. Ooh. This one's interesting. All right. So for clarification, kids are now 11, the boys.
Correct.
And they've been together since 6? Introduced to each other, been brothers since 6?
Correct.
Okay. Sounds like every cool meet my stepbrother, everything clicks story.
Oh, yes.
When you were describing and reading it to me, I was seeing Dale and Brennan from Step Brothers on the lawn introducing each other as Nighthawk and Dragon. And
amazing scene.
Yeah, I love that movie. That's what I'm seeing. And then they're just completely getting along the entire time afterwards.
Did you touch my drums?
Don't touch my drum set. If you get it, you get it. But yeah, it sounds like the kids got along perfectly. So yeah, they're very loving. And that's honestly what everyone asks for, especially when you're talking about blended families.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Where we get into the rub on this story is, sounds like OP's ex-husband is very much not in the picture. It went from 2 times a month to dwindling to 4 times a year.
Yeah, if they're that lucky.
Yeah, he constantly is a no-show for things, which is terrible. The only thing it seems that he's ever up for is the camping trip, which OP is very right. He's very lucky that the kid even still wants to be involved.
But it sounds like her son has a lot of empathy and compassion.
He sounds like he got a big heart, and he wants to invite his stepbro to go on the camping trip with them. I don't see a problem with that. I can understand, though, from both the fathers in this story, though, going, I would rather just spend that time with my son. And then his stepdad going, you know what? I can understand. Take him. I can get that viewpoint from what they're trying to say. I just don't agree with it. But I can understand it. There's a difference. I can still see your point, but not agree with you. I don't know. It almost sounds like the dad is pseudo jealous of the stepson and almost saying that the stepson's going to grab the attention from him while he's trying to spend it with his son. The camping trip anyway, which is really weird.
Yes.
To have that viewpoint of kids, especially if it's camping. Of course, they want to go. They want to experience it. I definitely don't think that the OP is the a-hole for asking the question.
Okay. So let me go ahead and let you know the moderators tagging to this and then what commenters have said regarding this issue.
Okay.
So she's been labeled for the moderators as the a-hole in this situation.
Okay.
And the commenters put down more details as to why it is that there's a back and forth between a-hole and not the a-hole. Now, she's not the a-hole for asking. She's doing what her son requested, which is, hey, Mom, can my stepbrother also come along on this camping trip? And she asked on her son's behalf, right?
Good.
Whether her son's just a little bit more on the shy side or is uncertain because his father doesn't truly visit. I'll get more into that in a minute. What tags her more as the a-hole in this situation is where it feels like she's trying to push it too much. She has the right to ask, sure. But the moment the other party said no, it should have just been that.
Okay.
If anything, this needs to be a stand where her son needs to bring it up more than she does, regardless of how she understands the situation and how things have panned out. Now, let me go ahead and delve into more of the relationship on what's going on. Unfortunately, our poster, being the mother, has had to deal with a lot of the emotional ups and downs regarding her son and her ex not visiting his son. And one of the hardest questions that I guess she's had to hear her son asking is, does Dad hate me?
Ooh, man.
And I think, and she actually admits it's one of the reasons why she's being so hostile regarding this, that her son even doubts that his father loves him because doesn't even want to make time to see him for the few times that he does.
I hope she's made him aware of this.
I'd have to say he's got to be aware of it. I mean, if anything, this conversation's got to at least have brought him
I
to
hope
speed.
so.
You know, because the thing is, as she said in her conversation with them, he's had plenty of times to try and bond with him. Not just this one camping trip that you decide that you want to make time for because you like camping. She said on quite a few of those occasions, he actually canceled very last minute.
Oh, you got the kid's hopes up. That kid probably knew that his dad was coming to pick him up and they were going to go on some dope trip. And then those are the worst.
Now, during this, our poster has actually said she's going to stop running interference. She's no longer going to shield her son and hide it from the father's mess ups, that it's not her place anymore because
it shouldn't have been at the beginning. He makes the decisions. We're a culmination of the decisions we make. Our relationships are a reflection of that.
Now, there were some commenters that believed that this idea stemmed from
the mother?
Correct, the poster.
So she was feeding the child to egg on him asking
Not
to
really
go?
egg on, or more like it was her initial idea, that she was the one to propose to volunteer that the stepson come.
Okay.
She absolutely slapped that away. She's all like, it's preposterous that you would think that I, as the stepmother, would insist that he bring his stepbrother along. She's all like, no, the only reason why I even asked is because my son requested that I ask. And apparently her son doesn't even feel comfortable enough to ask his dad himself because they don't really talk or communicate.
Well, yeah, he's almost a stranger at this point. Like, you see him 4 times a year, maybe. Sometimes if you don't cancel on him last minute. Like, of course he doesn't really know who you are and comfortable with explaining things to you or asking things of you. Hopefully they can get it worked out and come to a solution on how exactly everyone wants to spend their time, and hopefully the dad steps up in the future and is around for the kid a little bit more often.
Well, let's go ahead and see what's happening when it comes to this friend and family situation. For our last story, am I the a-hole for embarrassing my sister's friend and making her feel unwelcome?
I'm going to get the popcorn ready.
You're going to need a big tub. My sister, cousin, and a couple friends came over last night after work. My sister brought a friend of hers I'd only met a few times that I've never had an issue with. At one point, I went to the bathroom, and the ladies were in the living room calmly enjoying wine. When I came out, my sister's friend was in the kitchen, arguing with my son. I asked her what she was doing. She said my son went into the kitchen to get food, and she told him to wait until I came out of the bathroom to ask me for permission. I stared at her for a second and then said, "Who the f*** are you? You don't live here. He does. Who are you to tell him he can't go into his own kitchen?" She looked surprised and said she was trying to be helpful. I repeated my question of why she thought it was okay to tell someone they can't use their own kitchen when she's a guest in someone else's house. She dodged the question and then brought up that she's a teacher, which isn't even relevant, and sometimes kids try to get around rules. I asked her what that has to do with anything. I then asked who even gave her permission to go in my kitchen. She said she followed my son in. I said, "So you think my son needs permission to go in his own kitchen, but you can go wherever you like in my house without invitation? so you have more rights here than he does. She said she didn't feel welcome anymore and was leaving. She went back in the living room, grabbed her bag, and walked out. My sister asked what happened, and I explained that she had a disagreement with my son. My cousin and some of the other ladies said they thought it was strange she followed him into the kitchen and had been wondering why she did that and thought her motive was weird as hell. My sister and a couple other ladies said her behavior was perfectly normal and I was unnecessarily hostile to her. My cousin said, "But why would you confront a child you don't know instead of saying something to the aunt who's right here? That's so weird." Everyone but my sister acknowledged that part was weird, and we all moved on. Later, my sister confronted me privately and said she was upset I chased off her friend. She said she really likes this woman and that I was way over the top in the way I spoke to her. I can be a little extra when it comes to defending my kid. So was I the a-hole?
Wow, this is an oddball story.
I find them.
Yeah, okay. So let's set the table for the story. Everyone's coming over to OP's home. It sounds like a little get-together. So OP goes to the bathroom?
Yeah, she goes to the restroom.
And in that time period, OP's son goes to the kitchen to grab something.
Correct.
Because it's his home. And as he's doing so, the women are sitting, I'm assuming they're probably in the living room.
Oh, drinking wine from what
enjoying their night. And weird oddball friend sees said child going into the kitchen and proceeds to follow him into the kitchen and confronts him about going into the kitchen without permission.
Correct.
Okay.
But I guess she doesn't tell anybody at the party that
she just straight up gets up on her own and beelines it towards the kitchen with the kid.
Correct.
To accost him about being in there without permission from someone. Now, I can understand this if two things. It's oddball's home and that's oddball's child. There are two things that are not right in the story. So why would you, in not your home and not your child, go up and do those things?
When you also had a family member that was sitting with you.
Yeah, they pointed out you could have asked the aunt and go, "Hey, is it normal for him to go in on his own without permission?" How old is the kid?
He's 10, from what she said.
Okay, so I guess it wouldn't really have a impact on the story at all because it's still all the things I already labeled. Not her house, not her kid. Everyone handles things differently. I don't, in my mind, believe that OP was the a-hole. I just only wonder why the aggression was already at 100 at the start.
Well, the consensus is that she's not the a-hole. In fact, a lot of people applaud her for defending her son. It's not some outside person's, I guess you can say, prerogative to try and control things in your own home. And to go off into another section of your home to be alone with your adolescent child and then essentially authoritate anything in your home rings up a lot of red flags for a lot of people.
Sure.
For me, it does, personally. Now, did she go from 1 to 100? Possibly. Does she have the right to?
Sure.
Oh, that too, yes.
I think she had definitely the right to do it.
I've had it to where I've been explicitly told when going into people's homes, don't go into certain parts.
Sure.
It's none of your business. I know for me, whenever I've gone into a home that's a 2-story home, I get really weirded out even going upstairs because I know upstairs tends to be more private rooms, right? Bedrooms and more family close rooms rather than just a guest like me. I've also come from a traditional family where nobody walks into the kitchen, opens up cupboards, or does any of that without express permission from your host.
Yeah.
So where I think
even when I get permission from people, when
it's
I'm
still
over
weird.
I'm like, I don't know where things are. I don't want to touch it. I'm so sorry.
I don't want to break it. I don't want to.
But that's our
mess.
upbringing too. Is like I was the same way. Like when you go to someone's home, you don't touch things that don't belong to you. Like if they invite you to it, then you're allowed to do it. But don't assume that you can just live in someone's home when you walk in the door. Yeah, I would have loved to have heard exactly how she handled that. Again, I'm a teacher. That just sounds like it was a defiant, like it's a child. I can do what I want kind of reaction to that. So
right.
I wonder, maybe I'm being too lenient on her by going, why was she over 100? Because I definitely would understand being at 100 if someone was taking that tone with me and my child in my home. Is of course I'm going to talk to them like this. I'm a teacher. I'm teaching your child. Like, get out
then
of here, man.
Every one of my porcupine quills would be up and prepared.
Yeah.
Well, I know that there have been quite a few commenters that said our poster should sleep well knowing that she defended her family.
Hey, that's a good place to be. Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, You see in the world what you carry in your heart.
If you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. We are regularly posting on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
As always, listeners, we love hearing your opinions on the stories we provide. One last question. What's for dinner tonight?
Hopefully something delicious.
And remember, if you post it, maybe we'll see it on the internet.